Hello, everyone. My name is Tedia Eason. I am a TCM Technical Assistance Coordinator for the St. Louis County Regional Office, and I will be taking you through the first portion of this training.
Hello, everyone. This is Amanda George. I'm the Organizational Development Director at ETOS, which is a targeted case management entity in Jackson County. I'll be doing the second part of the webinar today.
Hello, everyone. This is Joe Lammert from the Springfield Regional Office. I'm Technical Assistance Coordinator, and I will be covering the third section of the training today.
So we're glad that you all could join us today for the Individual Support Plan Monitoring and Review webinar. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss changes to Division Directive 3.020, previously known as the Support Monitoring Policy and Implementation Guidelines, and sometimes referenced as Service Monitoring. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the directive, including Appendix A and Appendix B. The updates to the directive outline the shift in focus from a provider compliance model to a focus on the individual and the individual's support plan. The support coordinator's role is to ensure the individual is receiving the services and supports as outlined in their individual support plan. This includes reviewing authorized services to ensure the services are reducing the need, maintaining skills, and increasing the level of independence for the individual. The support coordinator's role is not about ensuring the provider's compliance. Provider compliance items are addressed through processes such as licensure and certification surveys, provider relations reviews, and contractual requirements. Another change to note in the directive is that the review of the individual support plan will be a part of the monitoring process and will not be a separate review process completed and documented with a different report, formerly known as the quarterly review process. The documentation for the individual support plan monitoring and review includes both the review of the individual support plan as well as the monitoring of services. This review and report is completed monthly for services that require monthly monitoring and is completed quarterly for those services that require quarterly monitoring. We will address the documentation requirements later in this webinar and will review the Appendix B document. The individual support plan is a document that results from the person-centered planning process. It is based on individual assessments that allow for the gathering of comprehensive information concerning each individual's preferences, individual needs, goals and abilities, health status, and other available supports and services. Individual support plan monitoring and review starts with the individual support plan, or as we know it, the ISP. All services and supports for the individual are developed through this person-centered planning process and are documented in the ISP. Individual support plan monitoring and review is driven by the supports and services which are identified in the ISP. This review is completed monthly for services that require monthly monitoring and completed quarterly for those services that require quarterly monitoring. The ISP will be reviewed for each service authorized and monitored. Individual support plan monitoring and review includes interaction with individuals in services and evaluating whether the services outlined in the individual support plan are being provided. It includes talking with the individual, observation, and review of documentation. Review of documentation includes review of the service provider monthly reports. These provider monthly reports may be reviewed at another time or location. Previously, support coordinators monitored the 5 areas of environment and safety, health, money, rights, services, and staff. Since the individual support plan is now the focus for monitoring, these 5 areas of monitoring are replaced by the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas. The Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas follow the requirements for the ISP and are also incorporated into the ISP guide. During the face-to-face visits with individuals and during quarterly phone contacts, support coordinators will review the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas listed in the Individual Support Plan Monitoring and Review Guidelines tool, which is located in Appendix A. Areas of review for individual support plan implementation include daily life and employment, community living, social and spirituality, healthy living, safety and security, and citizenship and advocacy. These life domain areas are based on the Missouri Quality Outcomes and are incorporated into the ISP guide. The ISP guide outlines the requirements of the ISP. Prior to these visits or contacts, support coordinators also review any previous unresolved issues. Information regarding unresolved issues for follow-up can be accessed through the Integrated Quality Management Functions Database, also known as the APPS database. The support coordinator will also identify if the ISP needs to be updated based on findings. This slide outlines the frequency of visits and contacts based on the service the individual receives. This frequency of visits and contacts overview table is located within the directive. You will note two services which have been added to the annual face-to-face and quarterly contact column. These services are the Autism Project services, which are funded via PAC, and the new Family Peer Support Service. A note has also been added to clarify that there are no monitoring requirements for those individuals who are non-Medicaid and not receiving DD-funded services. Individual support plan monitoring and review is performed at least quarterly with at least one annual face-to-face contact. As outlined above, the frequency and type of ISP monitoring and reviews is driven by the services authorized for the individual. Individuals who receive funding by the division for residential supports have monthly face-to-face visits by their support coordinator to monitor individual support plan implementation in the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas. Monitoring for residential supports is completed at the delivery site, which includes group homes, ISLs, foster homes, and family living arrangements. Monitoring of residential supports includes review of the individual supported living registered nurse oversight or residential group home registered nurse oversight summary document in order to support identified areas of health and/or medical services that are in need of further follow-up. The support coordinator will review to determine the follow-up needed regarding recommendations from the RN. Individuals participating in employment services, rehabilitation, and community integration have quarterly face-to-face visits. If an individual receives both residential and one of these three services, employment services, rehabilitation, or community integration, the support coordinator does not have to visit the residential site during the quarterly employment services, rehabilitation, or community integration service visit. The support coordinator remains responsible for a review of the ISP to ensure the service is occurring as authorized during the month, even though they may not see the individual face-to-face at the residential site. Monitoring will occur for each type of service funded. Individuals participating in rehabilitation, community integration, individualized skill development, personal assistant, professional assessment and monitoring, shared living, host or companion, or employment services, which are funded by the Division of DD, have quarterly face-to-face visits to monitor individual support plan implementation in the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas. Employment services, professional assessment and monitoring, rehabilitation, community integration, and individualized skill development have quarterly face-to-face visits with at least one annual visit at the site of support delivery. All other individuals receiving purchased services or supports, this includes transportation, counseling, therapies, adaptive equipment, respite, facility, in-home or out-of-home, temporary residential, dental, personal electronic safety devices, etc., will receive at least an annual face-to-face visit and quarterly phone contact to monitor individual support plan implementation in the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas. Also, note that facility-based respite and temporary residential will receive a monthly face-to-face visit if either support has been ongoing for at least 30 consecutive days. Individuals whose only support is support coordination receive at least an annual face-to-face visit and quarterly phone contact to assess needs for services and supports and resources. This would include individuals placed by DSS Children's Division without a waiver slot who have a child-specific contract. The outlined frequency of visits and contacts is a minimum standard, and it is expected that support coordinators exercise professional judgment and increase visits according to the individual needs of people. Unannounced visits may occur. For individuals living in their natural homes, less than quarterly contacts may be requested by the family, but must be agreed to by the support coordinator and documented in the individual support plan. Individuals choosing the option of self-directing services must live in their own private residence or that of a family member. Individuals may be receiving self-directed personal assistant, community specialists, and agency-based support broker services. Individuals must have quarterly face-to-face visits to monitor individual support plan implementation in the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas.
The second section talks about Appendix A and Appendix B. Appendix A, Individual Support Plan Monitoring and Review Guidelines, includes the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas of daily life and employment, community living, social and spirituality, healthy living, safety and security, and citizenship and advocacy. This guideline includes exploratory questions which can be used to assist the support coordinator in monitoring these areas based on the assessed needs as identified in the individual's ISP. Appendix A also includes the app's coding for findings the support coordinator identifies for entry into the Integrated Quality Management Functions Database, also known as the APPS database. In addition, Appendix A includes a comment section for the support coordinator to include notes they may want to capture from the monitoring. While the use of Appendix A is optional, any finding the support coordinator identifies for entry into the Integrated Quality Management Functions Database, also known as the APPS database, should follow the coding outlined in Appendix A under the APPS coding column. Appendix A is not intended to be utilized as a checklist, where each item is answered during each visit with the individual. While the SC is required to review each of the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas, the specific items that the SC will monitor within those domains will depend upon what is applicable for that individual based on their individualized ISP. For example, if the ISP documents that the individual is employed in the community working 3 days per week, but the individual reports they have not been going to work, the support coordinator will want to follow up with the service provider to ensure the individual is receiving those supports as outlined in the ISP, or there is a reason the individual did not attend work. For example, they were ill or chose not to go to work. The support coordinator will determine if the situation will result in an entry into the Integrated Quality Management Functions Database, or the APPS database. You can see the shift in focus from provider compliance to the focus on the individual and their ISP in the Healthy Living section of Appendix A. Each month, the support coordinator will review and sign the RN monthly summary. The support coordinator is responsible to ensure the recommendations from the RN monthly summary are followed. For example, if the RN notes that the annual physical is due for the individual, the support coordinator will follow up with the provider to ensure this has occurred. The support coordinator will monitor the ISP to ensure the service provider is following the ISP as written. Monitoring might include talking with the individual, observing services and supports, and reviewing documentation. Review of documentation could include RN notes, monthly summaries, and documentation around the supports of the individual. As an example, if the individual recently visited their physician and it was determined they had high blood pressure, the support coordinator might talk with the individual and/or staff about what the doctor said at the appointment and what additional health supports need to be added to the ISP. For example, maybe the doctor has prescribed a low-sodium diet for the individual, and their blood pressure is to be checked daily to ensure it falls within specific parameters. The support coordinator's role is to ensure the health inventory is updated for any significant health change, and the ISP is updated to reflect support needs around these significant health changes. Appendix B. Documentation of the individual support plan monitoring and review visit, phone contact, and other pertinent information occurs by completing the individual support plan monitoring and review monthly or quarterly summary, Appendix B. This documentation may be summarized in the log note or by referring to the completed individual support plan monitoring and review monthly or quarterly summary document. In the next slide, we will see these documentation requirements, which are outlined in Appendix B. This documentation should be maintained in the individual record. The individual support plan, ISP, monitoring and review monthly or quarterly summary incorporates requirements for monitoring documentation. If utilizing your own form or summarizing in a log note, you must utilize the same title. Individual Support Plan Monitoring and Review Monthly/Quarterly Summary. This form replaces the quarterly review and also includes findings from contacts previously identified as support monitoring findings. Support coordinators can bill this documentation under the Support Monitoring Code as part of support monitoring. The TCM Technical Assistance Manual will also be updated to reflect this change. Appendix B is not a required form. However, as noted in the previous slide, if the support coordinator utilizes their own form or summarizes their findings in a log note, they must utilize the same title, Individual Support Plan Monitoring and Review Monthly/Quarterly Summary. This consistency is needed for audit purposes. Issues have been noted with MoHealthNet audit requests where inconsistent documentation has been submitted. Section 1 of Appendix B. Note the months the review covers at the top of the form. A monthly service will indicate the month of review, and a quarterly service will indicate the 3 months the review occurs. The quarters are determined by the implementation date of the ISP. For example, if the ISP implementation date is May 1st, 2019, for a quarterly service monitoring, the first quarter of review will be May, June, and July of 2019. Section 2. The ISP monitoring and review report is completed monthly for services that require monthly monitoring and is completed quarterly for those services that require quarterly monitoring. There will no longer be an additional quarterly report to complete for a monthly service. Multiple services can be included on the summary. Section 3. Provider monthly reports are considered to be current if they are current at the time of the monitoring visit. For example, it would not be noted as a finding if a service provider has not yet completed a monthly report for the month of June when the SC completes a monitoring visit on June 14th, as the monthly would not be due until the 15th of the following month. The support coordinator will mark all that apply in Section 4, and any concerns require a comment to be made in Section 5. In Section 6, the support coordinator will include dates they had contact with the individual and whether that contact was by phone or face-to-face. This contact may occur any time during the quarter. This section will also include any monitoring findings that were identified in the Missouri Quality Outcome Life Domain areas. Page 2 of Appendix B includes a conclusion of the review findings and any follow-up required as a result of the review. A box was added under Section 8, No DD Funded Services for Follow-up, to use as an option when the individual is not authorized any DD funded services. They are receiving case management only. Therefore, no other items within this section, the other items within this section do not apply.
Support coordination process for identification, communication, and resolution of issues. Findings will be entered, in this section we'll review the process for support coordination, identification, communication, and resolution of issues. Information has been added to the directive to better clarify roles and responsibilities during the monitoring process. Following each visit, the TCM provider must document positive comments, issues, and concerns. Findings which require follow-up or findings which were addressed on-site are entered into the Integrated Quality Management Function Database, commonly referred to as the APPS database. If a support coordinator does not find any issues during the visit, this is documented and copied to the provider within 5 working days. If the support coordinator identifies an issue that can be resolved during the visit, or the issue is a one-time concur, the support coordinator, after resolving the issue, documents the issue and resolution with a copy to the provider within 5 working days of the visit. The method of notification to the provider of the issue and resolution can be via email, by providing them a copy of the APPS entry, by sending them a copy of Appendix B, etc. Findings will be entered into the Integrated Quality Management Function database. If the issues are not resolved, the support coordinator will indicate the follow-up action they have completed in order to ensure the needed action is taken by the service provider and resolution occurs. The support coordinator will verify that issues have been resolved, and the resolution date will be entered into the Integrated Quality Management Function database. If a support coordinator identifies or learns of incidents of abuse and/or neglect during the visit, he or she will report the incident according to the Department Operating Regulation 2.210 or Department Regulation 9 CSR 10-5.200. If a situation is identified during a visit that the support coordinator deems critical, that is dangerous or harmful, and the person or staff are in immediate risk, the support coordinator will remain on site until adequate safeguards are in place and/or the support coordinator supervisor or the regional director, TCM executive director approves their leaving. The support coordinator will then report the situation to the regional office provider relations. Issues involving individuals placed by DSS Children's Division will be communicated to the DSS Children's Division by the designated staff of the entity making the finding, which would be either the regional office or the TCM agency. This includes children placed by both children-specific contracts as well as IDAs. If the support coordinator identifies any of the following, the support coordinator must take action to resolve with the provider. Multiple issues occurring at one time, which in their totality indicate to the person performing support monitoring that the health and/or safety of the individual receiving services will be jeopardized if the noted issue continues. Issues occurring over an extended period of time, defined as more than 2 months, non-life-threatening issues that recur after correction or do not appear to be consistently resolved over time, significant health changes in the person they are supporting, or evidence of violation of individual rights. In order to resolve the identified issues, the support coordinator will first inform the support coordinator supervisor regarding these issues. The identified issues will then be discussed with the TCM agency management team to strategize for resolution of issues. This will include follow-up with the service provider management team. Then, if issues are not resolved at the support coordinator supervisor and TCM agency management level, the agency will notify the regional office provider relations in writing to request additional assistance in working towards resolution. The TCM agency, service provider, and regional office shall then meet within 7 calendar days to strategize for final resolution of identified issues and develop an action plan to document strategies and the responsible parties. A copy of the action plan will be maintained by all involved agencies. The support coordinator remains responsible to ensure verification of resolution of all issues identified through their monitoring or to notify the regional office of non-compliance. The regional office is responsible to ensure that both the TCM agency and service provider resolve issues in a timely manner. All findings identified for the individual will be entered in the Integrated Quality Management Function database for tracking and trending. The support coordinator continues to monitor the issues during routine visits or more frequently if indicated by the regional office. The support coordinator then ensures the dates when issues are verified as being resolved. When an issue concern is identified, it is entered initially one time in the Integrated Quality Management Function database. It is then resolved when the support coordinator verifies and enters the resolution in the Integrated Quality Management Function database. Findings from the monitoring are shared with the service provider within 5 working days of the visit. The support coordinator forwards this documentation to the provider's responsible developmental disability professional or facility administrator. The findings are then entered into the Integrated Quality Management Function database. Individuals and/or their supported decision-making representative or guardian will be educated on the individual support plan monitoring and review process, and they will be notified of findings from the visit as requested. This education will be provided by the support coordinator. We want to thank you for your time today, and we hope this webinar has been helpful. Division Directive 3.020, along with Appendix A and Appendix B, are located on the Division database or website. We would also encourage you to keep or print this slide to show as a resource for future use and reference.